All right, so this is holograms, and you've seen them before. There's a PDF on Canvas. You can read through the whole thing. But ideally, what we're going to be focusing on is more of like an interface hologram, right? So the one that you see here with Iron Man in his suit, that's actually like a 3D model that they brought into After Effects or Nuke or some other program, and they've created that look of the hologram effect. On top of it, you can see these little things here. That's all the kind of stuff that we're going to be creating, this kind of interface type setup, okay? We'll be using 3D more exclusively now. We kind of introduced you to it a little bit, but now we'll be using 3D to actually create more depth in these and kind of the movement of how they're going to spin around. If you've seen Ender's Game, they use these a whole lot in Ender's Game where they would have these things. The kids could just go in there and grab stuff and move it around and separate things. So your job is to go through and here's your steps. You can follow them. There we go, and here we go. There we go. Your job is going to be to create an interface, okay? And then all the interface elements will then be generated. So for your sketches, you can do these by hand. So if I try to draw a perfect circle and then try to draw another one on the outside, another one on the outside, it doesn't look very good. So whenever I do interfaces, I have stencils, and I kind of use these stencils as ways to draw my shapes. It's a lot easier to go into Illustrator, try some stuff out, and see. So for Monday, I want you to have an interface or 3 interfaces designed. They don't have to be terribly complex. Correct. So this kind of thing here, it looks fancy. There's nothing like crazy about it. It's basic shapes. I'm not going to go through the Illustrator part of this. This isn't an Illustrator class. I will touch on basic parts of Illustrator when we get to it, but things like adding circles and adding strokes, that should be easy. Okay. All the stuff that I have here, I'm using duplicating and duplication commands. Where I have the dots here, I'm using the stroke and just having it have dashes instead of, here's my stroke. So I've set my stroke to be dashed lines. So instead of a solid line, it's just dashed. Okay. These pieces here I've broken off into several pieces. So like if I were to create that there, and I switched it, I'll go through with the scissor and just cut it up. And then I'll grab random pieces of this, like that, like this, like that, and then I'll just change the stroke weight. And so now those pieces look like they're thicker, they look more, fancy, right? Or if I didn't want those pieces there, I can just delete some of these, and then I would have these openings, okay? There's a lot of different ways you can create these shapes. So I don't want to focus any of the lecture time specifically on how to create these things, because a lot of it is just basic shapes that when you were in Illustrator class, you would have already learned that kind of stuff.
Do you have to have those like plus signs there?
You don't. Your interface is going to be how you design your interface. So one of the things I have inside of, there now it loads, inside of Canvas is this PDF, of course. Now that's going to take forever. But another one is obviously going to YouTube, doing some research, seeing what interface designs look like. And then another one is this thing, which is, so you should have that. All the things that are going to be animated together would be on a separate layer, okay? So things like this piece and this piece, all these pieces here would be animated together. It's just going to rotate. So as I'm creating this, I'm kind of thinking about how do I want it to animate. That's just going to rotate. So all of these are on one layer. Okay, it's just one layer here, and I've called it Circle Dial. It's labeled so I know what it's called. Further down here at the bottom, I have these things. These are going to be like little meters that just kind of go up and down. So in order for me to animate them individually, the background piece, which is the light blue, that's on one layer. So all 4 of these are all on one layer for the background, because that pretty much won't move. It'll just stay static. But then each one of these is on a separate layer. Even down here, each one of these is on a separate layer, because I want to animate each one of those kind of scaling up, even if it's just a little bit up and down. I still want the ability to tweak that manually. The thing with this is just adding a bunch of useless details, right? It's just stuff that makes it look fancy. This thing has no purpose, but it's going to look fancy. It's going to help ground where my interface is, so that as I start designing it, I have a base to start from, then all my interface elements can kind of come up from there, okay? I don't know what I'll do with these yet. I may just have these kind of shimmer or just use as just floating pieces. Yes, sir?
Yeah, you can wait to explain to afterwards. I'm just wondering, are we going to be, when we put them in the cinema, are we going to have footage that goes with this, or how are we going to implement this, or is it just going to be one piece of film on its own, or footage on its own?
This is just going to be one piece of footage on its own. I will show how we can incorporate it into a piece of video in After Effects, but I won't require that we do that, right? A few years ago, we actually did that. We had, one of the assignments was you would make a hologram, a 3D hologram type thing. So that was more like a Star Wars projection hologram versus something like this is more like an interface, okay? Cool. So all my stuff is on separate layers. That way when I bring this into After Effects, everything is set up. And if I look at, let me hide. Oops. What's that hotkey? There it is. So you can see I have a green layer too. I'm also considering colors as I'm working on this. You want to have 2, 3 at the most colors. You don't want to go crazy with this. These will be on black backgrounds. So, or, you know, some light, darker color background. That's what's going to make it pop more. So we have to make sure you pick colors that are obviously complementary to that. If you look at the ones that are in, now this has gone back already. If you look at the ones that are like in Iron Man, he uses blue for a lot of his colors, but then you'll see he has little bits of orange inside here, and then there's a little bit of green inside here as well. So all the colors kind of work together. We want to make sure there's enough detail there that it looks complicated. Ash Thorpe, one of the things he says is, you know, I design interfaces that I would never want to operate because they're too complex, but they look interesting. That's the idea with it, okay? So this kind of stuff here, consider maybe, it doesn't have to be just like a random one. You could actually think about what you would actually use it for. So let's say that you're going to create an MP3 player or a movie viewer or something. What kind of controls would you want on that, and where would you want those controls, okay? So do some research. All the pictures that you research, save those into your folder. So we've already discovered or created our template folder for that class. So we can duplicate it. We can start going to hologram. And then any of the references would go in reference. So as we start getting images or videos or any of that kind of stuff, we would throw that all inside this reference folder so we have this kind of stockpile of stuff to go to, okay? So for Monday, have 3 interfaces. Do you know what size they're going to be? 960 by 540, right? So in Illustrator, make 3 of these 960 by 540. And that way on Monday when I check your sketches, I can see, have you gone complex enough? Is it organized enough? When we come in on Wednesday, we want to be able to just jump right in and start animating our stuff without having to spend 2 weeks drawing the stuff out in Illustrator. It shouldn't take 2 weeks. This one here I drew while watching one of the Marvel movies. It doesn't take long. Once you know the basics, like I want to create lines, done. Look at the balance of it, look at the line weight. A lot of these you'll see there's a lot of variation of, these are thick lines, these are thin lines, these are even thinner lines, and I could go even thinner here if I wanted to. And then everything is just set up so that it all works, or could work together. Questions on this piece? Yes, ma'am.
So is the 3 in Illustrator instead of drawing in our sketchbook, or should we draw first?
No, you however you want to do it. If you want to sketch it out first, and then put it in Illustrator, or you can just do it in Illustrator. My process, I like to go in Illustrator because it's quicker for me just to draw a circle and then put dashes versus me trying to perfectly outline it. Correct. Yeah, so this is our planning. So our sketches are just planning things. These ones, it's easier to plan in Illustrator than on paper, for me.
Would you recommend any text at all on these?
You could add text, okay? Now, consider too, we've already gone through some of the text things that we have played with. If we wanted to do text that's just sitting there, maybe it flashes or maybe it blinks, we could do the text inside here. If we want to do the text inside of After Effects, maybe we just put a placeholder for it, right? So if I wanted text running along, let's say down here. I'm going to make a new layer because everything's off. Okay, I'm going to line up my stuff. That's one of the things that will definitely help. I'm going to put text there. And I would just type text placeholder. That way I know when I get into After Effects, I may have some kind of effect that's going on there. I may want kind of like that write-on effect, and then it switches and does another, or not a write-on effect, but a typing effect or something else happening. You'll see that a lot in some of the more techie ones where they have like a computer screen that's just kind of scrolling through data. We may want that, or I may want that in here, so I'm not going to do it in here. I'll just put a placeholder because I know in After Effects that's where I'm going to do it. Okay? Anything else? All right.